Today on Let Them Talk TV, you're going to learn all about Northern Irish English. In this video, we'll take a deep dive into the accent, its vocabulary, grammar, and expressions. And for that part, I will be joined from Belfast by Alister McCarthy. And for the phonetics part, I'll be joined by accent coach Luke Nicholson. But in order to understand how we got here, we need to look at the fascinating history behind the English spoken in Northern Ireland. I hope it nourishes your soul, so let's go. And I'm delighted to welcome today, all the way from Belfast, Alister. Boucher.
I'm doing all right. What about you, Gideon?
Fine. Did I say that correctly?
Yeah, about you. That was good.
For those that don't know, Northern Ireland, where is it? Is it a country? Is it a region? Tell us more.
Fantastic question to start things off, Gideon. So Northern Ireland is a constituent country from the UK or the United Kingdom, which your viewers will know. One of the four constituent countries, which are, of course, Great Britain, which is England, Scotland and Wales, and then Northern Ireland, which confusingly is located on a separate island, which we share with the Republic of Ireland.
If somebody asked you or a person in Northern Ireland, where are you from, how do they respond?
Often confusion is, when you say Northern Ireland, people are often confused. But people from my part of the world would either say, I'm from the UK, I'm from Northern Ireland, which we usually are often abbreviate to Norn Iron.
Norn Iron?
Yes.
Okay.
Or they might say something more from a nationality point of view. I'm Irish or I'm British, perhaps depending on how they identify, though. That's quite a complicated
Okay, we'll go into that another day. So sometimes you see the term Northern Ireland and sometimes Ulster. Are they interchangeable? Are they different?
They are not quite interchangeable. So Northern Ireland, as we said, is a constituent country of the UK with 6 counties. Ulster, whereas, is one of the 4 historical provinces of the whole island of Ireland. So Ulster is composed of the 6 counties in Northern Ireland, and then somewhat confusingly, 3 of the counties of the Republic of Ireland, that is Donegal, Cavan and Monaghan. And it gets even more confusing, Gideon, whereas only really one of these counties, Donegal, kind of has the same accent, this Norn Iron accent.
Just to be clear, Donegal, it's in the Republic of Ireland, but it shares the same accent as Northern Ireland.
Yes, that is correct. I wouldn't quite say the same, but certainly similar, yes.
Okay, and you're from Belfast, that's correct, isn't it?
Yes, I'm from Belfast, the capital city of Northern Ireland.
And there are a number of other towns and cities in Northern Ireland. Does each one have a recognisable accent? Can you distinguish when someone's from, I don't know, Armagh or Derry or another area?
Possibly, though, because it's a small country and we only have 5 cities, I think, Gideon. You can't always tell. Perhaps the thing you can tell is whether someone is from a city or whether somebody's from the countryside. We can normally tell that.
Is it possible? Are there different accents between the different communities within Belfast and Northern Ireland, or do they generally sound the same?
I think it's hard to distinguish. Certainly in the 21st century, it's hard to distinguish between the communities, if we can use that word.
Okay, so maybe older people might be able to distinguish, but not the younger generation.
Yes.
So now we're going to go through some grammar, some expressions, and some vocabulary that are features of the Northern Ireland accent and how they differ to my accent. The first one is you. Now, in my English, there's only one form of you. There's you singular, you plural. But in Northern Irish English, there's more than one you.
Yes, Gideon, that's correct. We would use you for the singular. However, for the plural, we might also use the words use or usins or yiz. For example, something like, what are you doing later? Which is the same as, what are usins doing later?
Usins.
This point would be more common amongst colloquial speakers, particularly with family members or close friends. If you're doing a formal speech, you're probably not going to use the word usins, for example.
But I could say, are usins coming down the pub?
Perfect. Yes.
Now, next one. Excuse me if I'm looking down here. I've got some notes.
It's okay.
I've got notes here, so forgive me if I'm glancing at these notes because I can't remember it all. Now, in the Irish language, there's no word for yes and no. And although most people in Northern Ireland do not speak Gaelic, it has influenced the Northern Irish accent. Okay, so instead of saying yes and no, as I would do in my accent, in the Northern Irish accent, they may answer with a pronoun and an auxiliary verb. We'll look at some examples in a second, but is that basically correct? That's what my notes say.
This is correct. And when we were chatting previously, Gideon, I hadn't been aware of this, but this is absolutely something we do in Norn Iron.
You weren't aware of it because it was so natural you didn't think about it?
Precisely.
Okay, so if I say, are you Alister?
I am.
So, are you an English teacher?
I am an English teacher.
Was the Titanic built in Belfast?
The Titanic was built in Belfast, aye.
Okay. It was. I think in Northern Ireland they're very proud of that fact that the Titanic was built in Belfast.
Yes.
Okay. Have you ever been to the Titanic Quarter?
I have been to the Titanic Quarter.
Okay. So basically, in my accent, you'd probably just say yes and no. Are you Gideon? Yes. I think we could say it the way you say it, but I think it sounds just a bit more emphatic. Are you Gideon? Yeah, I am. I've told you already. So, but that's more the natural way of speaking in Northern Ireland.
Yeah, it is in conversational English. Okay. I've called it the double affirmative. I don't know if that's
the double affirmative. Okay, I'm coming to that one. I'm coming to that one. Okay, because as well as this form, the auxiliary and the pronoun, you also use I, which is from probably the influence from Scottish English, and now for no. Is that right?
I and nah.
Nah. Excuse me.
Nah.
So that's correct. Use I a lot.
Yes, we use I and nah.
So you could use both of them together in a sentence. So, for example, Alister, did you get the job?
I did, aye.
And I'll just say in my English, yes. Or probably no. They won't hire me. We have the verb want, which in my English, we don't usually use in the present continuous. You don't usually say wanting, are you wanting? But in Northern Irish English, it is possible. So, for example, in my accent, I would say, do you want something from the village? Whereas in Alister's English,
we might say, are you wanting something from the village?
You'll also hear this in some forms of Scottish English. So that's correct, isn't it? You can use want in the continuous form.
And important to drop the G, wanting, rather than wanting, wanting.
We, which you might have heard in Scottish English. Is that right? We.
Yes.
And what does it mean? We, so W-E-E, I should say, yes.
So the word we might be my favourite Northern Irish word.
Okay.
We often use it as a diminutive, meaning little. And as you say, that comes from the Scottish influence. However, sometimes the word we is just used and it doesn't carry any meaning. It's a nondescript adjective or adverb, and it just doesn't mean anything. And people across the water, that's those in Great Britain, England, Scotland, and Wales, find this quite annoying that Northern Irish people just use the word we incorrectly in terms of what they're thinking.
So, for example?
For example, I'll have a wee cup of tea.
So I say, here's a very little cup of tea for you, Alister.
No.
Well, you said a wee cup of tea. That means small, doesn't it?
No, it's just a friendly term that doesn't carry any meaning in this example.
Okay.
Or another one, and this, it's even more clear that we does not mean small or little, is, could you give me a wee helping hand?
Okay.
And of course, the person probably wants quite a lot of help.
Yeah. Maybe the same with, I'd like a wee drink. Probably it's not just a small drink.
Yes.
Okay. Interesting. So, Alister, would you like a wee drink?
Aye, I would.
Next expression, which this one confused me a little bit. Baltic, meaning extremely cold.
Yeah, let's look at the pronunciation first. It'd be a bit more harsh, we'd say this one. Baltic.
Baltic. That hit me here. Baltic.
Yeah. Baltic.
Did I say it correctly? I'm not going to sort of do much Northern Irish accent myself today, but I'm going to try that one. Baltic.
Excellent.
Okay. So Baltic means extremely warm and sunny. Is that correct?
No, extremely cold. For example, we might say it's Baltic out here. I don't know about usins, but I'm going inside for a wee drink.
Okay, but I found this a little bit strange because people from Northern Ireland using the term Baltic to refer to cold, where okay, is the weather, I'm not a meteorologist, but is the weather that different from, I don't know, Vilnius and Belfast?
I guess it's not as cold, and that's why maybe the phrase can be confusing. This one, Gideon's actually quite close to my heart. I lived in Latvia, which is one of the Baltic states, for 3 years, and the people there I was teaching English to found it quite funny when I said that it was Baltic. They're like, but that's just an adjective to describe my country. Yeah. What's it got to do with the weather?
It's always Baltic here, yeah. Okay.
Exactly.
That's funny, yeah. There's another one. I wasn't familiar with this one. Scundered. It's derived from an old Scots word, scunner, meaning to shudder. So what is scundered?
Scundered is a popular Northern Irish term used to describe the feeling of embarrassment or discomfort.
So here's my phrase in my English, and Alister, you can do it in Northern Ireland English. When nobody laughed at the jokes in my speech, I was so embarrassed.
When nobody laughed at my jokes in the speech, I was scundered.
With good reason.
Yeah.
And the only Northern Ireland phrase I used myself at the beginning was Boucher, which I probably didn't pronounce well. Boucher.
Boucher. Boucher. It officially means, how are you? Though it's normally just used as a common greeting, and responding to the question, how are you, isn't necessary. Really, it's hi. It's just a way to facilitate a conversation.
A few more expressions here. First one is Julio Wist. What's that all about? I'm sure I pronounced it wrongly. What is it?
Hail your wished, which means to be quiet. Hail your wished.
What is a melter?
A melter is one of those really annoying people. He's a melter.
I've got a sentence here which I'm going to say in my English, and you can translate it if you wish. You're so annoying. Just keep quiet. I'm trying to work here.
You're such a melter. How you're wished. I'm trying to do some work here. An important point here, Gideon, and this is maybe one of the subtleties in Northern Ireland. as I said before, this is actually quite endearing. I would only ever call a close friend or a family member a melter. I wouldn't really use it to actually describe someone I don't like. So
Oh,
it's kind
okay.
of endearing,
Okay.
if that makes any sense.
I got it. Yeah. Ah, you're such a melter. Means, stop winding me up or something like that. Or
Yes, you've captured
okay.
the tone really
Good.
well there.
Biza.
So Beezer. Now, I know you're looking at this in the final section of this video. A very strong R. The strong
Bizarre.
R. Beezer means great, amazing, excellent.
Bizarre.
Beezer. The party last night was Beezer.
Okay. You had a wee drink, I believe, at the party last night.
I did, and it was Beezer.
Dead on.
That's right, absolutely, sure, no problem, yes. Any of those.
So I could say to you, you's coming into town for an Ulster fry.
Aye, dead on.
I should say that I wrote that sentence, Ulster fry. I was searching for some typical Northern Irish food, and that's what I came up with, Ulster fry, which looks very remarkably similar to an English breakfast, but I'm sure you're going to tell me it's completely different.
There are some differences. Maybe in a future video you'll do the food from different English-speaking
Maybe
parts
I
of the
will.
world.
Maybe I will. Between 1801 and 1919, the island of Ireland formed part of the United Kingdom, and the century prior to that, Ireland was a British colony in all but name. After a bloody war of independence fought between 1919 and 1921, most of Ireland gained independence in what was known as the Irish Free State, and later on the Republic of Ireland. But Britain held on to 6 counties in the north of Ireland, which is still part of the UK today and is known as Northern Ireland. A violent sectarian conflict raged between 1968 and 1998, known as the Troubles. A peace agreement was signed in 1998 and it's known as the Good Friday Agreement. At the 2021 census, its population was 1,903,175. The capital and largest city is Belfast, with a population of about 350,000. Now they say that Northern Ireland accent begins like a bad joke. There was an Englishman, an Irishman and a Scotsman. And that's because it's a kind of hybrid of these 3 accents. I'll explain that in a moment. The Northern Ireland accent is relatively new. It didn't exist 400 years ago. While the vast majority of the population of Northern Ireland have English as their mother tongue, there are in fact 3 indigenous languages to Northern Ireland. The first is the Irish language, or Gaelic, which was once spoken across the island of Ireland. It's been spoken in Ireland since at least the 3rd century AD and perhaps longer. The number of Irish speakers has decreased over the centuries, and today there are around 200,000 native speakers, mostly around the west coast of Ireland. Irish is an official language of Northern Ireland too, and this is what Irish sounds like.
Mar gheallar gur tógu agus gur rugú sa Gaeltacht me in sna 1970, bhí an Gaelic thar timpeall achanaid ní raibh mar an bearla le cloisteáil a ghabhainnear an telefís agus ar an radio. So bhí an Gaelic a gcónaí in sa timpeallacht againn.
The Ulster Scots language. During the 16th and 17th centuries, the plantations of Ulster was a form of colonisation by Great Britain, during which English and Scottish settlers were encouraged to move to Northern Ireland and much Irish-owned land was confiscated. The politics of this period are still felt today. The division of Ireland and the decades-long conflict was a direct consequence of the plantations. But they not only caused social upheaval, but also linguistic change too. And the result is the accent of Northern Ireland. Many of the settlers came from England and many more were Scottish immigrants who spoke the Scots language, and it's still spoken in Northern Ireland today by around 79,000 people, according to the 2011 census. Here it's known as Ulster Scots, while some 19% said that they had some knowledge of Ulster Scots. And this is what Ulster Scots sounds like.
Keep it up off your shoulder. If you took the front bit, the swelling bit, you could say it was the crabbing. And then down to the shoulders, your arms.
About 99% of the population of Northern Ireland are English speakers, but Irish and Ulster Scots have greatly influenced the pronunciation of English there.
It is not buried and gone, Ryan. It is not too far away. And in fact, the first job I had when I came back from the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art, or RADA, as you might know it, RADA was in the autumn of 1981. And I went back to my granny's and I stayed with my Uncle Jim and my Auntie Kathleen and played Billy in the Billy Place for a month.
Did you know that Kenneth Branagh is from Belfast?
Yeah, and I guess I was really surprised when I found this out because, of course, I've just known Kenneth Branagh from watching TV shows, films with him in, speaking in RP.
This is his real accent. Would you like to comment on it?
Yes, well, you can hear that the vowel in the word face, this A vowel sound, which I've mentioned a few times in the video, this vowel sounds a bit different in Northern Ireland. For some people, it can start forward and then move back. So it's something like ear, ear. So you can hear this in the word AT, which is something like eary, ear,
1981.
And also in stayed and played and place, which has this ear rather than a, which it would be in my accent. You can also hear that just like Australians and Americans, this T is tapped. So rather than autumn, he says something like autumn, with that r type sound, which can sound a bit like an Italian or a Spanish r.
And the autumn.
I think one of the most salient features of Northern Irish English is the vowel sound in mouth. Unfortunately, there isn't an example of this in the clip, but the vowel sound in mouth in my accent is an ow sound. But in Northern Irish English, it can sound very different. So it might be something like oi, mouth, oi.
Mouth. Shut your mouth.
And it varies in Northern Ireland, but that's something that's worth listening out for. So something like how, now, brown cow, the vowel sound in all of those words, how, now, brown cow, has that oi sound instead. The vowel sound he uses in back and granny, this a sound is definitely further back in the mouth compared to my accent. So rather than back, it's something like buck, rather than a. This is a really small difference.
My grannies.
Northern Ireland English is very distinct, but it's connected through history to Irish, Scottish and Welsh English. To find out more, check out our videos on these accents. And if you're interested in the history of the English language, then do sign up to our newsletter. It's free, link in the description. Thanks once again to Alister and Luke for taking part. See you next time. Bye.